Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Generator Founder Series Spotlight. Today, I am joined by Patrick O'Reilly, founder and CEO of FactoryFix. All right, Patrick, welcome.
Thanks, buddy. Good to be
L-
here.
Let's dive in. Tell us about FactoryFix. What's your background? What led you to starting the company, and then what is FactoryFix?
I started a company right out of college with a couple high school friends, and we designed and built like robotic automation systems for manufacturing companies. So you can think of those like, yellow robot arms you see on commercials and stuff. We would build machines with those at the center of them and install them in factories and do all the service and maintenance after that. And that was fun. We had no idea what we were doing at first. We got to learn business. That was like our MBA. But I was definitely getting some FOMO from like the tech startup scene, because we were doing this, like manufacturing business essentially. And this is, like 2016, that year, like everyone was doing like their version of Uber for X, that type of like gig economy model. And we thought there was an opportunity to do that in our space for like servicing the machines we installed. And so I started like this side company. We called it FactoryFix, and it was going to be Uber for service technicians, basically. And yeah, that's essentially how it started. Now, we're probably on iteration 4 or 5 of FactoryFix at this point. But today we're AI recruiting platform for skilled trades in manufacturing. And even though we've had different business models, like it's always been centered on helping manufacturers and industrial companies find, skilled talent for their roles.
I like it. And
Yeah.
what's the current status of the company? So, however you want to define that, maybe it's fundraising, revenue, traction, customers. What's the current status of FactoryFix?
Yeah. So we have over 700 customers now, which is pretty wild to say. We've raised 16 million bucks over the life of the company, something like that. But I'm actually like the most proud of the fact that we're profitable now. Like we reached that last year, and we still are growing at a good clip. I mean, I think we're on pace to grow, 50% on the top line, this year, if things go as they're going now, which, knock on wood, isn't always the case.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, we've eclipsed that kind of milestone that everyone looks at, which is that 10 million ARR mark.
Congrats.
We hit that, recently. So yeah, we feel like we got a ton of momentum right now. We're excited about it.
Nice, congrats. And then where are you in the company located?
Yeah, so we built the company in Chicago and also Madison. We kind of had like dual headquarters, like even before, remote work was kind of a thing, Um, but at this point, after the pandemic and that whole ordeal, we're a remote company. I live in the Dallas area now. But most of the time was spent, kind of building it out in Chicago and Madison. And that's where all our investors are. Obviously we did the accelerator in Milwaukee, which were fun times. And then coming out of the program, like the introductions that I got through Generator led us to raising our seed round through, Capital Midwest and Great North Ventures in Minneapolis and Hyde Park Venture Partners in Chicago. Um, and Rise of the Rest was the other kind of investor that came out of the Generator program.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, we've Midwest investors. We look at ourselves as like a Midwest company.
Nice. Now, thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur, whether it's, prior to Factory Fix or for Factory Fix, what was the biggest challenge you faced as a founder and how did you overcome it?
Uh, yeah, it's a tricky question. I think what comes to mind is just like figuring out the type of company that we wanted to be and not chasing the latest trend, right? Or the headlines that you see. And for us, this kind of manifested itself in like, we raised after we raised like the Series A and the seed round and stuff, like we found ourselves like burning more cash than we ever should have, right? We definitely got caught up in the whole 2021, 2022 like ZERP era, and that's just like not our company DNA, but we thought we needed to be like a West Coast like startup, and try to throw everything at growth. And even when we were growing like really fast during that era, um, we there were signals that like that it probably wasn't as sustainable as like it should have been, And I don't know. I think part of it's just like maturing as a person and a founder, but like I should have been much more comfortable with like who we were as a company and like always run the business like how I wanted to run the business and like how I felt like our company DNA is, based on, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, that manifests itself in like the profile over hiring, optimizing for the wrong metrics, right? Like we always fought like this like retention metric, like we need to optimize, everything around this. And, like I can boost retention by not selling to smaller companies, but that's just not the right thing for our business, and I can optimize retention by like forcing companies to buy long-term annual contracts all the time, but that's not the right thing for our business, right? So these are the things you kind of learn, and um, I've made every mistake in the book over the course of the 9 years we've been doing this.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's something you can even learn, before you actually make those mistakes.
Yeah. Related to that, what's one thing you wish you learned sooner as a founder?
Uh, Having a great finance person.
Hmm.
I think that's something I totally missed early on, mainly because, I have a finance degree and I thought, I could just handle it. Like it's not rocket science. But having a great finance person, like whether it's like on your full-time staff or even if it's a fractional person in the early days, it just takes like, I don't know, so much stress off off your plate. And if you don't do that, like things can definitely fall through the cracks. And yeah, I mean that's the one thing that jumps out immediately.
And then remind us, when did you go through Generator?
2017, we were in the Milwaukee batch.
Nice. And then tell me
Yeah.
more about your Generator experience and how would you say the accelerator helped you the most?
Um, yeah, I mean, I look at it as a really like fun period, right? I think one thing that jumps out was might have been the first or second day, like meeting with you and Joe and trying to describe what the company was and what it did, and then have you guys basically like write the brief for me. Like you guys, I don't know, internalized it and were able to articulate it like much better than I could, right? So I think helping us with like company positioning, telling our story, and then the whole like pitching to VCs was completely new to me, right? So that was my MBA in the VC and venture startup world, was going through Generator. And uh, I remember the trips, right? Going to San Francisco. And, part of it's like, I don't know, I'm somewhat embarrassed by like some of the memories there. Like I remember one meeting that you guys set up with a VC in San Francisco, and I just said the dumbest stuff like ever. Like they would ask me questions that, today are like super basic questions that I have answers for. But back then I just was totally unprepared. And uh, I remember like the person's face was like, "You're a complete idiot." Like, get out of my office. But just going through some of that, like going through the reps. I mean, you guys had so many meetings you set up for us. Like, you just have to go through the reps and
Yeah, I agree.
embrace the embarrassment. I guess it just makes you better.
Yeah, I agree. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs and founders that are considering an accelerator?
Mm. Um, I think you only do it if you're like serious about it, right? Like you get as much as you put into it. I think we had a good cohort, but certainly other cohorts that I met with, um, it was kind of like a side project. They weren't totally sure they wanted to like pour into the startup. And to me, it's kind of a waste of time. Obviously, it's wasting your guys' time. So you really got to invest in it. I mean, it's a big time commitment, and so you got to make sure you're in a good place in your company, but also a good place in your life to do it. And luckily, I did it, before I was married, before kids, and could really, go on all the trips and make the trip up to Milwaukee, live on that train from Chicago to Milwaukee. Um, so I don't know. I don't know how useful that is, but like, it is a commitment. And yeah, I mean, you got to make sure you're ready for it.
Yeah, I think, being all in is a really important thing, and it's not for tourists, like
Yeah,
committing yourself and your time and your
for
attention.
sure.
Tell me about your favorite part of the program, or perhaps the favorite connection that you made either during or after a generator.
Um, yeah, I mean, look, I think some of our investors today are the ones that I met during the program. So, I mean, the cohort was great. Like having that camaraderie was awesome. We had Mike from Steam Chain and, Cherry and the Keo, founder. Like it was just a lot of fun going through that together. And I remember, those being really strong relationships at the time. Obviously over time it falls off a bit, but the key connection that you guys made was I didn't have a CTO going into the accelerator program, and through the mentor swarm, you connected me with Tim Knott, who
Yeah.
became our CTO and our third hire ever, and he was with us for 9 years and really helped us build the tech stack from nothing. And so I think going into it with specific asks totally helped me. Like told you guys like I need a CTO, and your guys like I got you. Like here are the people you need to meet, and then need to raise capital. Obviously, that's the core of the accelerator program, but you know being able to filter it down to like you have to talk to these firms, and like Hyde Park Venture Partners, like met them through the program. They said no multiple times until we were ready, and then they said yes. And just keeping that relationship, warm throughout. And just because you get a no during the program doesn't necessarily mean like that's a no forever. And you guys really like drilled that into us for sure.
Yeah, and I also think it's the like being pleasantly persistent, like continuing to send monthly updates and showing the progress and traction that you're making, and I think that helps people where we can open the door as an accelerator, as generator, but then it's really incumbent on the entrepreneur or the startup to show that growth, show that traction to ultimately be attractive to those investors, and
Yeah.
communicating that is a big part of it.
Yeah, you guys are great at that. I mean, even like basic email etiquette, like how to like accept an intro, like how to follow up from it. how to, follow up after a meeting, the recurring investor updates, like what they should say in the format. Like that's the stuff I didn't know any of that going into the program. So yeah, I think it's stuff you don't think about that, you guys do a great job of setting us up for.
I appreciate hearing that. All right, my last question. I asked this to each entrepreneur that I interview. If you had one ask for this audience, people watching this interview, maybe that's an investor, a customer, advice, mentorship, what would your ask be?
Customers all day, like I'm sales minded first and foremost. So if you know manufacturer, an industrial company, or a staffing firm in the industrial world, tell them about FactoryFix, send them my way. Uh, that's my ask, right? We just need to keep growing revenue.
Let's get it. Industrial customers, send them to Patrick. We're going to include a link to Factory Fix in the description. Make sure to check that out. Patrick O'Reilly, founder and CEO of Factory Fix. Always a pleasure, and just congratulations on your success.
All right. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.